into this dish so we can add a little more sweetness and flavor and also those fermented solids to make your dish nice, moist, and soft. That's going to make this dessert really extraordinary. Attention, we interrupt this yummy recipe for an important historical information about the beginnings of sugar, since, after all, knowing the past helps us appreciate the present and plan for the future. Sugar, a key ingredient in many fine food recipes. And what most people don't know or forget, sugar was used in many medicines and medical purposes. First planted in New Guinea around 8000 BC, initially it was the only way to extract the sweetness from the sugarcane was to chew on it or extract the juice from it. But 7,000 years later, around 1000 BC, sugarcane was taken to India, and the Indians were the first to cultivate and refine it more. The impact of the Indians' work with sugar led to India gaining the reputation for being the birthplace of sugar, though we know historically New Guinea was where sugarcane was started. In India, the Indians experimented with sugar, and they found a way to crystallize sugar around 350 CE. This made sugar more accessible and easier to transport. To get an idea of the impact of refined sugar on the people of the world at this time, come with me as we follow a lovable sugarcane stalk, Sean, on his journey around the world. Our trek will start in India on a sugarcane farm in the 5th century CE. Let's say it's one of the most famous sugarcane farms of all time. Our sweet main character, Sean, did not look different from any of the fellow sugarcane stalks around him, but in a short time, he would become the most important sugarcane stalk in Asia. In the year 495 CE, Sean was born into a sugarcane farm located in the present area, New Delhi, India. And when I mean born, I mean he was planted. For 24 months, Sean was watered and tended to by care with his owners. During these 24 months, he made the best of friends. These friends were on the same height as him and within 2 feet of all times. After 24 months, he was gently stripped from his home and taken to a building in the village which he had grown up in. The building was used for making crystallized sugar. Sean could not be happier. He had just been chosen to be crystallized. This was a dream for all sugarcane stalks, and he was honored to be chosen. And this also meant he would be eaten in 2 to 3 years. This also is a great accomplishment among the sugarcane community. So Sean's moisture was extracted and boiled, thus crystallizing him. Sean had been reborn into a harder, more tastier form, and Sean was ecstatic and ready to be eaten right away. But little did Sean know of the long and grueling journey which was ahead of him. Only 2 days after Sean was crystallized, he was purchased by a traveling merchant and put into a barrel full of other sugarcane stalks, newly converted to crystals. Now, keep in mind, sugar crystals varied in shapes, sizes, and were not uniform to small grain sugar crystals that we know and love today. Now, back to Sean. In his barrel, he met a few interesting characters. One of the sugar stones was named Enzo. He was a 10-pound crystal with hard edges. He was from the area now known as Mumbai, India, and had been crystallized for almost 2 years now. Sean asked him why he had not been purchased yet, and he responded with a laugh, saying no one has the money. Enzo explained that sugar was incredibly expensive, especially when you were 10 pounds. Sean realized that crystallized form of sugar was considered a luxury and only available to the rich, and Sean was still asking questions when the cart began to move. They were off to China. I feel compelled here to stop in Sean's journey and explain the importance and, more critically, the value of ancient sugar. Before sugar was a worldwide ingredient, it was only consumed by the rich. Sugar only became cheaper and more widely available to the common people after the 15th century when Sao Tome, Madeira, and the Canary Islands were colonized by the European countries. When this happened, sugar was cultivated there, and sugar production skyrocketed to 1,400 tons annually. Prior to this, sugar was an absolute luxury due to its scarcity and was highly protected and only affordable to the rich. Sugar had been on almost every famous trade route throughout history. For the Silk Road, sugar was mainly monopolized by China and India and made an abundance of wealth for both countries. Now let's get back to Sean. They were off to China via the Silk Road. The Silk Road was one of the most famous trading routes in all of the ancient world. Mainly known for their silk trade, it stretched across much of Asia and a bit of Europe. Along this route, the merchant that owns them is having trouble selling the sugar because of its price. But their next stop was a very special stop. As the barrel opened, Sean could see a man dressed in yellow armor with a spear in his hand. The lid closed and Sean could feel the entire barrel being lifted and carried. Who could afford an entire barrel of sugar crystals, he thought. Unbeknownst to Sean, they had just entered the palace of Emperor Taozong of Tang. The man in the armor placed the barrel in the throne room, and the lid was lifted, and a hand reached in and grabbed Sean. Frightened, Sean called out, "Help!" But no one could hear him, because he was sugar. Sadly, those were Sean's last words, and he was eaten by Emperor Taozong of Tang. But while it was an ending for Sean, it was an exemplary of the journey of sugar that went from cane to consumption. Right after Sean was eaten, the emperor uttered something in Chinese, which Lucy translated and meant, that's good." Well, Sean's journey had ended. 650 years later, sugar made its way to Europe via the Crusaders. In Europe, at first, sugar was only used as a medical herb. Many people referred to it as sweet salt or healthy honey. This continued until the mid-15th century CE, when, as I said earlier, Sao Tome, Madeira, and the Canary Islands were settled from Europe, and the sugar that grew there. As I also said before, 1,400 tons of sugar was being produced annually after this. Sugar became the substitute for honey in sweeteners and became a common ingredient in cooking pastries and cake. Now that you can appreciate how this sweet staple in our lives came into and around the world, we return you to your normal programming.
What just happened? What just happened? Are we still on? What's going on?
I don't know, we just got turned off.
Like, this is my time to shine. What's going on? I have to...
Keep going. We're live.
And then we're gonna mix this sugar into the dish, and we're gonna finish this dish up, and then we're gonna enjoy a really great meal.